When the text came in, I was sitting in my car, outside the very house my mother used to bake pies in. The words blinked across my screen like they'd been waiting for me all day. Thanks for nothing. No punctuation. Just that sharp and cold. For a long minute, I just stared at it. The sale papers were already signed. The house wasn't mine anymore, wasn't ours anymore. And that text felt like the last nail sealing something I hadn't even realized was still open. I don't know if you've ever felt that kind of emptiness, where anger doesn't even fit yet, because shock takes up all the space. I didn't cry. I didn't text back. I just looked at Mom's old front porch, half expecting her to walk out with her apron on and tell me to come in before dinner got cold. But she'd been gone a year now, and the only thing left was the echo of her laugh in rooms that weren't ours anymore. After Mom passed, it made sense for me to stay close. My brother, Mark, and his wife, Trina, had moved into Mom's place to keep things organized until we decided what to do with it. I'd been living in a small apartment across town, working part-time at the local library, and coming by on weekends to help sort through Mom's things. Trina was polite at first. She'd make tea, ask about my job, talk about her plans for renovating the kitchen. I thought we were a team. I really did. Mom's passing had hit us differently. Mark was the practical one, the type to deal with paperwork, lawyers, estate details. I was the emotional one, the memory keeper. I cared about Mom's keepsakes, the chipped teacup from her honeymoon, the sewing machine she'd used to make our Halloween costumes. When Mark said he'd handle the legal stuff, I trusted him. I didn't even read the fine print when he said we were listed as joint heirs. It was my brother. What reason would I have not to trust him? The house had always been more than a property to us. It was the backdrop of our entire childhood. The smell of cinnamon bread every Sunday morning. The way the sun hit the kitchen table around 9 a.m., spilling over Mom's crossword puzzles. The dent in the hallway wall where Mark and I crashed our bikes trying to race inside before dinner. Every corner carried something sacred. But as the months went by, I noticed things changing. Subtly at first, Trina started rearranging furniture, not in a spring cleaning kind of way, but like she was redesigning the space for herself. Family photos disappeared from the mantel, replaced by abstract art and expensive candles. One afternoon, when I came over to help pack the attic, she'd already thrown away a few boxers marked Mom's linens. When I asked about them, she just smiled and said, "Oh, they were too old to keep. Don't worry, I took care of it." Mark brushed it off. "She's just trying to make the place more livable," he said. But something about the way Trina moved through that house like she was practicing ownership made my stomach twist. Still, I kept helping. I told myself grief makes people weird. That Trina probably meant well. I spent my weekends labeling boxes, wiping down shelves, folding curtains that smelled faintly of lavender detergent. It was exhausting, but it felt like the last thing I could do for Mom. Then, one day, I came by with lunch, tuna sandwiches and lemonade, the way Mom used to make when we did chores. Trina answered the door wearing gloves, her phone tucked between her shoulder and ear. She waved me in but didn't really look at me. There were unfamiliar shoes by the doorway, men's work boots, not Mark's. The living room was half empty, furniture gone, the sound of tape being peeled somewhere down the hall. When I asked what was happening, she said, almost casually, "Oh, the realtor came by. We're just getting things ready in case we decide to sell." I froze. "In case," she shrugged, still typing on her phone. "You know how it is. Mark, it's good. We're just exploring options." That night, I called Mark. He sounded tired, like he'd been caught between us. He said nothing was decided yet, just that they were looking at possibilities. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe family meant honesty, but deep down, a small voice whispered something else, something I didn't want to face yet, that maybe, for some people, grief wasn't about holding on. It was about taking what they could before someone else did, and I didn't know it then. But that house, Mom's house, was already slipping out of my hands. It was a Thursday evening, the kind that sinks quietly into your bones. I'd just finished shelving books at the library when I decided to swing by Mom's house, or what I still called Mom's house, to drop off a few old photographs I'd found. The sky was heavy with spring rain, and the driveway glistened in the streetlight. But when I turned the key in the lock, it didn't fit at first. I thought maybe I'd picked up the wrong key from my ring. I tried again, slower this time, but it jammed halfway. I knocked, confused, a little embarrassed. Trina opened the door a few moments later, her smile too tight, like it had been painted on. "Oh," she said, her hand still on the knob. You should have called first. Her tone wasn't rude. Exactly. Just distant. Like I wasn't family anymore. Just an acquaintance who'd overstayed her welcome. I was just dropping off something for Mark, I said, holding up the small envelope of photos. He's out, she replied quickly. And, we had the locks changed last week. You know, for security. For security. Those words echoed in my head the whole drive home. Security from what? From me. When I told Mark later, he apologized, said it was a misunderstanding that the realtor recommended a new lock system for insurance purposes. I wanted to believe him, but something about the way his voice faltered made it clear he wasn't telling me everything. After that, things got quieter. My calls went unanswered more often, texts left unread. Every time I stopped by, there seemed to be fewer traces of the home I remembered. The floral wallpaper Mom loved had been painted over with pale gray. Her china cabinet, gone. The smell of cinnamon that used to greet me at the door had been replaced by Trina's eucalyptus diffuser. Still, I tried to stay calm. I told myself it was just change, that maybe letting go looked different for everyone. But the next clue came by accident. One Saturday morning, I went to pick up some old mail that still came to my name at the house. Trina wasn't home, but Mark let me in. While he was in the kitchen making coffee, I noticed a stack of papers on the dining table, open folders, highlighted printouts. I didn't mean to pry, I really didn't, but then my eyes caught a familiar name on the top of one document, Hillside Realty Group, and below it, in bold letters, offer accepted. I froze. Mark, I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. What's this? He came over, saw the paper, and the color drained from his face. Oh, that's just part of the paperwork. Nothing's final. I pointed at the bold stamp. It says accepted. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. We were just exploring options. Like I said, you know, testing the waters. It doesn't mean we're selling. But something in his tone told me otherwise. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every memory of Mom in that house played in my mind like a film reel I couldn't stop. The smell of her garden after the rain, the sound of her slippers on the kitchen floor, the way she'd say, "You to take care of each other when I'm gone. Promise me." I thought about that promise, about how we'd stood side by side at her funeral, hands clasped, both crying. And now, here I was left out of the very decision that should have been made together. The next week, I called the county records office under the pretense of checking some estate details. The woman on the line was kind, efficient, and she didn't hesitate when I asked if the property under my mother's name had changed status. Yes, she said, Matava. It's in escrow now. Sale expected to close next month. I remember gripping the phone so tight my knuckles went white. Escrow. It was already happening. I hung up without saying much else, my heart pounding like a warning drum. The betrayal wasn't loud, it was quiet, efficient, neatly typed on official letterhead. For days, I moved through the world like a ghost. I went to work, smiled at patrons, shelved books, all while my insides were unraveling. Every time I passed a family sorting through boxes in the library donation bin, I felt that familiar sting, the sound of tape, the shuffle of old memories being packed away. And still, I didn't confront them. Not yet. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that maybe there was some misunderstanding, some technical mix-up that would make this all make sense again. But deep down, I knew. Mom's house, the house she'd worked her whole life to keep, was being sold right out from under me. And the people doing it weren't strangers. They were my family. I don't know what made me drive there that evening. Maybe it was the silence of my apartment, or maybe it was the gnawing feeling that wouldn't let me rest. Either way, I found myself pulling up to Mom's house, our house, just as the sun was setting. The windows glowing amber in the dying light. There was a for sale sign planted on the front lawn. I don't know how I hadn't seen it before. Maybe I hadn't wanted to. But there it was, bold red letters against the white post, fluttering slightly in the evening wind. SOLD. That word hit me like a punch. I sat in my car for a long time, just staring at it. The house that had once been full of Sunday dinners, birthday candles, the smell of Mom's rose lotion. It was now just a transaction. I finally got out and walked up to the porch. The front door was locked. A faint light flickered inside boxes stacked near the wall, furniture gone. It looked hollow, stripped, and then I saw Trina through the window. She was laughing into her phone, holding a glass of wine, her voice carefree. I couldn't hear her words, but I could see her mouth move, a slow, drawn out, finally, that word again. I rang the doorbell, once, twice. When she opened the door, her expression changed in an instant. Surprise, guilt, then annoyance. "Oh, I didn't know you were coming," she said, crossing her arms. I stepped inside without asking. "You sold it," I said quietly. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded small, far away. Trina blinked. "Mark didn't tell you." "Tell me what?" She sighed, that long, performative sigh people do when they're pretending to be the victim. "We had no choice, really. The taxes, the maintenance, it was too much. Mark handled most of it. You know how these things go." "Too much?" I asked. "You mean too much for you too?" "Because I wasn't consulted. Not once. That house was Mom's. It was ours." Her expression hardened. "You didn't contribute much, Nora. You weren't around when things needed fixing. Mark and I took care of everything after your mom passed. We had to make decisions. It was like a knife twisting. I moved in to help, to sort her things. Remember, you said you wanted me there." Trina shrugged, sipping her wine. "Well, that was months ago. Things change." For a moment, the room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. "Where's Mark?" I asked. "At work," she said flatly. "He didn't want to deal with this tonight." "Deal with this?" "Meaning me." I nodded slowly, the realization settling like cold rain. "So you went behind my back, sold Mom's house, took the money." Her eyes flicked away, guilt flashing for just a second before her mask returned. "We split it fairly. Between us, you weren't on the title, Nora. Legally, it wasn't yours." I could barely breathe. "Legally," I whispered. "But you knew what it meant." She didn't answer. I turned and looked around the room. The bare walls, the faint outline where Mom's framed family photo used to hang. There was nothing left of her here, just emptiness and the faint scent of paint. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I said, my voice trembling. "It's not that you sold it, it's that you didn't even think I deserved to know." Trina didn't say a word. I walked toward the door, my eyes stinging. I didn't want her to see me cry, but before I could step out, her phone buzzed on the counter. I saw the screen light up. It was a text from Mark. Just 3 words. "Funds cleared." Finally, that was when it truly hit me. They'd planned this together. Not out of necessity, not out of hardship, but convenience. They wanted the money, and I'd been nothing more than an obstacle. That night, I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands hurt. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at my phone for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt hollow, until my phone buzzed. A message from Trina. "Thanks for nothing." 3 words that cut deeper than any betrayal could. No context, no explanation, just the final twist of the knife. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, and then, for the first time since Mom's funeral, I allowed myself to break. The tears came fast, silent at first, then shaking, uncontrollable sobs, because that message wasn't just cruel, it was final. It was the sound of a door closing, not just on the house, but on the only family I had left. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, replaying every moment of the past year, every dinner, every shared chore, every time I'd said thank you to a woman who'd been quietly writing me out of my own family's story. By morning, something inside me shifted. Maybe it was grief turning into clarity, or pain finding its shape. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let this end like that. They might have taken the house, but they weren't going to take my story with it. I spent the next morning staring at my mother's old photo. It sat on the dresser, the one piece I'd taken with me when I moved out. Her eyes in that picture were soft but steady, like she was always one step ahead of the chaos. I used to think I inherited her patience, that quiet ability to wait for things to unfold, but that morning, I realized patience wasn't the same as silence. I opened my laptop and started digging. It began simply, typing the address of the house into a property record site. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, only that I needed to see it with my own eyes. And there it was. The sale had closed 3 days earlier. Buyer listed. Sale price visible. My brother's signature right there at the bottom of the page. Seeing his name, Mark H. Lawson, made something inside me tighten. It wasn't just a line of ink. It was betrayal, spelled out in legal print. I took a deep breath and scrolled further. There were records of the escrow account, the distribution of funds, all clean, all official, and yet, what I saw between those lines was something far from clean. They hadn't even waited. The sale had been processed through their joint account. I wasn't on any paperwork, but I remembered Mom mentioning years ago that she had intended the house to be for both of us. 50-50, she'd said one night over tea, so neither of you ever feels left out. I'd believed her, but believing doesn't hold up in court. Still, I wasn't after the money. I was after the truth, the dignity of knowing I hadn't been crazy, that I hadn't imagined the coldness in Trina's smile or the distance in Mark's eyes after the funeral. I called Mark that afternoon. He didn't answer the first time, or the second. On the third ring, his voice came through, clipped, cautious. Hey, Nora, everything okay? Not really, I said. We need to talk. A pause. Now's not a good time. It wasn't a good time when you sold Mom's house either, I said quietly. There was silence on the other end. I could hear the faint hum of a car engine, the shuffling of guilt through the phone. Nora, he began. You weren't on the title. Trina and I handled the bills, the insurance. It was just easier this way. Easier for who? I asked. Because it sure wasn't easy for me to find out through a sign on the lawn. He sighed. You're taking this the wrong way. No, I said. I'm finally taking it the right way. For once, he didn't have a comeback. That night, I started gathering everything I had, old receipts, Mom's will drafts, letters she'd written me. One in particular stood out. It was dated 3 years ago, her handwriting neat but a little shaky. If anything happens to me, Nora, promise me you'll keep the house as long as it feels like home. You always understood what these walls meant. I folded that letter carefully and tucked it into my bag, not as a weapon, but as proof that I still had a place in that story. The next morning, I drove to the lawyer who had handled Mom's estate. His name was Richard Patel, a kind man with salt and pepper hair and a way of speaking that made everything sound possible. He looked up from the papers I handed him and frowned. They sold it without consulting you. Yes, I said, and they took everything. He nodded slowly. Do you have documentation that shows your mother's intent to leave the house to both of you? I pulled out the letter. Just this. He read it quietly, then met my eyes. It's not a legal will, but it carries emotional weight. If this went to court, it wouldn't reverse the sale, but it would expose the moral breach. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. That's enough for me. For a moment, he studied me, maybe expecting anger or vengeance, but all he saw was a woman who wanted her voice back. Would you like me to contact them? He asked. I shook my head. No, I'll do it myself. So that evening, I went back one last time. The new owners hadn't moved in yet. The driveway was empty, the curtains still bare. Mark's truck was parked out front, Trina's SUV beside it. They were there, collecting the last of their things. When I stepped out of my car, Mark looked startled. Trina's face tightened immediately. Nora, Mark said, taking a step toward me. I didn't expect. I'm sure you didn't, I said. I handed him the letter, Mom's letter, and waited. He unfolded it slowly, his brow furrowing as he read. When he finished, his hand dropped to his side. Where did you get this? He asked softly. She gave it to me. Before she died, Trina snorted. So what? It's not a will. You can't do anything with that. I turned to her, steady but calm. You're right. I can't undo what you did, but I can make sure everyone knows exactly how you did it. Her smirk faltered. I went on. Mom's lawyer has this letter now. So does the real estate office. You'll keep your money, but not your silence. Mark ran a hand through his hair, looking down. You didn't have to go this far. I didn't go far enough, I said. You could have told me. You should have trusted me. Instead, you let your wife speak for both of you, and she spoke with greed. Trina took a step forward. You don't get to talk to me like that. I met her eyes, steady. Then maybe you shouldn't have taken what wasn't yours. The silence between us stretched thin. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The air was heavy with words unsaid. Finally, Mark sighed. I'm sorry, Nora. It wasn't much, but it was something. I nodded, turned, and walked away, leaving them in the doorway of a house that no longer felt like home. As I reached the car, I looked back one last time. The porch light flickered on, the same light Mom used to leave on for me whenever I was out late. For a second, it almost felt like she was telling me it was okay to go, and so I did. A few weeks passed. I didn't hear from Mark or Trina. After that night, the house sold officially, the papers closed, and life, as they say, went on. But something strange started to happen. It began with a phone call from Aunt Carol. She sounded half concerned, half curious. Honey, she said, I just ran into your cousin Tom. He said Mark sold your mama's house. Is that true? I didn't have to answer. Silence was enough. Then another call came, from Mrs. Green, Mom's old neighbor. I thought I saw a moving truck. she said, her voice trembling. I wanted to make sure you were okay. That place was your mama's heart. The truth was traveling faster than I ever could. Mark and Trina had always been proud of how responsible. They looked to the family, the golden couple, the ones who handled everything after Mom's passing. But now, people were starting to ask questions. Questions they couldn't brush off with polite smiles or half-truths. I hadn't spread anything malicious. I didn't have to. I had only shared Mom's letter, one copy to Aunt Carol, one to the lawyer, and one to my uncle, who'd helped Mom write her first will draft years ago. The rest, as they say, took care of itself. By the next Sunday, whispers were floating around the church potluck. Did you hear what they did to Nora? She trusted them completely. And that poor woman just lost her mother. It wasn't revenge. It was light, the kind that finally seeped into the corners they'd kept dark for months. That afternoon, I saw Mark at church for the first time since the confrontation. He looked older somehow. His shoulders were heavy, his smile strained. Trina wasn't with him. When he approached me after the service, people were already watching. He hesitated, then said softly, "Can we talk?" We stepped outside, near the old oak tree where Mom used to sit after Sunday Mass. The air smelled like spring damp grass and rain-soaked dirt. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit he'd had since we were kids. "I don't know how to make this right," he said. I looked at him, my voice quiet. "You can't make it right, Mark. You can only tell the truth." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Trina's been staying with her sister. We've been fighting since that night. She thinks I should have stood by her, but deep down, I know we crossed a line." I didn't gloat. I didn't want to. "There's no peace in someone else's misery. I just wish you'd trusted me," I said. "We could have made those decisions together. You didn't have to choose her over me." He swallowed hard. "It wasn't about choosing, Nora. It was about control. Trina, she likes things her way. I thought selling the house would close that chapter for all of us, but it didn't. It just burned the book." His honesty hit something inside me. I didn't expect sadness. Yes, but also a flicker of understanding. "I can't undo what's done," he continued. "But if you'll let me, I want to help you. Mom had some savings I didn't tell Trina about. I want you to have it. It's not much, but it's—" I stopped him gently. "Keep it, Mark. This was never about money." He nodded, eyes lowered. "Then what do you want?" I thought for a moment. "For you to remember who Mom raised us to be." He didn't speak again. We stood there for a long moment, the church bells faint behind us, and then he walked away. A week later, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was a check, not from Mark, but from Trina. The amount was exactly 1/3 of the sale profit. Attached was a single note. "You were right. You deserved better." I sat with that for a long while, not because of the money, but because of what it meant. Somewhere behind all her spite and selfishness, Trina had a conscience. It just took losing everything to hear it. I deposited the check quietly and used it to start something I'd always dreamed of, a little crafts shop downtown, selling handmade keepsakes, jewelry boxes, picture frames, memory chests. I called it Rosewood, after Mom's favorite tree. The day I opened, I placed her photo on a shelf near the register, the same one I'd kept on my dresser, through everything. Customers came and went, some just browsing, some sharing stories about their own mothers, their own memories, and in every conversation, I found a little piece of healing. Sometimes people ask if I still talk to Mark. I do, occasionally. It's not like it used to be, but it's honest now. Trina and I, though, we haven't spoken since her letter, and that's okay. Some chapters are meant to end quietly. I still drive past Mom's old house sometimes. It's been repainted, the garden's different, the curtains are new, but every time I see the porch light on, I can almost hear her voice again. "Keep the house as long as it feels like home." Maybe I couldn't keep the walls, but I kept what mattered, the lessons, the love, the strength. And that's something no one can ever sell.